I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people just like you who are doing great things in the world I think you should know about. Today's guest I met several years ago when I was speaking at a Veg Fest in Colorado, and she did a cooking class, and she was amazing. Her food was amazing. Her presentation was amazing, and she has written so many books, which we'll tell you about. I'll just show you one of them, which is The Vegan Air Fryer. And you know, we are fans of air fryers, and so is she, and she can talk about that. And I just really like her. I don't know. She's just great. Short hair, tatted, those are my kind of girls. What can I tell you? All the way from Colorado, she's going to be cooking up some umami vegan. Please welcome JL Fields. Thanks so much. It's been a while.
It has. It's so good to see you. I think the last time you and I actually had a conversation was back with my old radio show that no longer exists. And oh my God, that was such a fun conversation.
Absolutely. You look great. I mean, I know you're never supposed to comment on people's weight, but you do look like not that you needed to, but you look fantastic either way.
Well, thanks. I had a feeling some of your fans might have noticed that, because the last time you and I had a conversation was about how people feel about other people's bodies. So yeah.
Well, especially if they're vegan. It's like, well, especially if they're in the public eye, I should say, whether they're vegan or not. I mean, there's whole channels devoted to people's weight, whether they weigh too much or too little in their opinion, which I think is just ridiculous that people even care. But either way, you look great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to talk about some of your tattoos, though, because I know that my viewers and myself, whenever I see a tattoo, it's like, what does that mean? Because I have a couple. Mine are lower, but
I didn't know that.
I do. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I like tattoos. I really do. But my husband doesn't. So I have to respect that. So I have them in places where they're just not showing all the time, so I can enjoy them. But I have Scooby-Doo.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, I have Scooby-Doo. And then, so I stopped at 2. I could see myself getting enough. I just wish they didn't hurt so much. But more, I wish they weren't so expensive.
Yeah, actually come to Colorado Springs. Got a great guy. He's very affordable.
I did not know, unfortunately, that there is such a thing as vegan ink. So technically my tattoo is not vegan, because at that time I did not know.
Oh, there's so many things. Isn't it crazy? Like, as every time you think you've got it nailed, and then there's something and you're like, oh my gosh, that's one more thing. But then once you know, right?
Absolutely. When you know better, you do better. It's not like I'm going to get it removed. So I noticed that, because I'm on your mailing list, and guys, get on our mailing list, because everything's there, jlgoesvegan.com. Since the pandemic began, you started doing weekly cooking classes.
Yeah. Well, you have been doing daily and multiple, but yes, I did weekly.
and so how does somebody, because I know it's tomorrow, and how does someone join in?
So everything is at my website, jlgoesvegan.com. And when you go to jlgoesvegan.com, if you want to get on my newsletter, a thing will pop up and you can do that. And I did want to let people know that, because I was telling AJ that I'm kind of like loosey-goosey with these things, and I just want to make what I want to make. And so I'm going to make a point that what I do today with the bean dish, I'll actually put in my next newsletter. So if you want to get the recipe for what I'm doing today with this bean dish, sign up for my newsletter and you can get that. But there's a tab that says the Cooking Academy. I have a vegan cooking academy here in Colorado Springs, which obviously closed in March due to the pandemic. And so if you just click that, all my classes are online right now. And I did do 16 classes. I only remembered to record 15 of them that you can watch on YouTube. That was sort of like the pandemic series, we called it. So I do 2 a month now, and tomorrow's is creating flavor profiles.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. So you use the term umami, and I'm not sure everybody knows what that means.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, and then we can talk about a tattoo. I love umami so much, I had it tattooed on my arm. So umami, we know flavors like sweet and sour, salt and bitter. And in Japanese culinary cuisine, a term was coined called umami, which can be translated as sort of meaning meatiness or even savoriness. And so sometimes that gets like literal, taken very literal, like, oh, it means meat, but that's not the case at all. There are lots of foods that are vegan, plant-based foods, and there are cooking techniques that can bring out an element of umami. And so when you think about those other flavors like sour and bitter and salty, and now think about umami in a sense of meatiness, it's a way that brings out this essence of flavor that can make you start to feel just kind of like a sense of satiety. Like you're like, I feel full, I smell, I'm getting, my senses are alive from this smell. And ingredients I'm going to be using a lot of the ingredients today to just show you 3 simple recipes in which you can make your plant-based cooking pop with just 1 or 2 umami elements, but it's things like ripe tomatoes and nutritional yeast. And it could be like wine or soy sauce or mushrooms, dried or fresh mushrooms. And then it's grilling and caramelizing and braising. Those are all ways to bring out just sort of this meatiness in your plant-based cooking.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
So what's first?
Oh, so let's do it. All right.
Well, let's jump in. We can still talk. I know that you're able, because you're a culinary instructor, so you can talk and cook at the same time.
I can definitely do that. And if anybody has questions, you just like give me the sign. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make 3 things. And the reason that I didn't provide recipes in advance is because I really wanted to go with like what's in my kitchen right now. I'm a home cook who happened to take a few cooking classes and then happened to write a blog and get a book deal. And so like I'm like maybe know a little bit more, but I don't feel like, I feel like we're all home cooks doing this together. So when I'm teaching classes and when I'm doing something like this, I'm just using what I have at home. I'm not going to the grocery store to get something. Like I want to show you real life. This is how we do this. So real life today, because I get my produce delivery on Mondays, is things are getting a little, scarce. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an umami bean recipe. It's infamous in my book, Vegan Pressure Cooking. Oh, I will show you. Some of you got this when it first came out and it looked like this.
I have
a couple
that one.
years later, it came back out, and because we added some recipes and a chapter or a section on the Instant Pot, but all the other recipes are still there and 20 new recipes. But the umami Anasazi beans, I did on my entire book tour because they're easy, they're super flavorful, and I always call them like the vegan maker. Like if you're going to have people over to your house who don't eat plant-based or vegan, and you want to give them something that just makes them think, you're not giving them something that looks like meat or something. You're just giving them a wholesome, delicious, super savory, flavorful bean dish. But I made changes to this one in honor of you, AJ, and I know a lot of your followers eat a little bit differently than I do.
Right, so but remember, this show is like a lot of different people, so we allow things that maybe I don't eat, and we have Reva saying that she has that cookbook and she loves it.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much. And I know that you and I have always been cool about this. You've always said but I wanted to do that. And so what I'm doing today is I'm going to do a version of the umami Anasazi beans, but I actually just had dried kidney beans that I threw in my pressure cooker today and cooked them for an hour. And I'm going to add this to this. And the reason I'm doing it that way is so that if you have canned beans, that's fine. Whether you made them dry or you made them or canned, just use a can or a cup and a half or 2 cups of cooked or canned beans. And I'm going to use kidney beans today. But what I'm going to do is show you, let me see, I'm going to move, I have all these burners on because I wanted to make sure we were ready to roll. So I will bring the camera over when it makes sense, you guys. Just trust me on this. So I want to show you one way that I like to do an alternative if I'm using less oil or no oil. So this is going to be no oil. So I just made my own veggie broth, not with vegetables the way you think. I have this, I have a book coming out in the fall. I'm not sure if I can really talk about it yet. So I'll just tell you that I have a spice blend that's going to be in it. And it's either a no salt, low salt, or give me the salt version. But it's got like dried mushrooms, which is umami, lots of smoky flavor. And so I added that to this just to get a little broth going. So when I want to do something oil-free, you can hear that sizzle a little bit. I start with a little veggie broth or water. I'm going to bring the camera over. Is that okay? You don't mind if I keep moving things around?
Not at all. What does your shirt say? Vegan what?
Oh, vegan for justice.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, the other reason I love doing this is because this is my kitchen, y'all. It's not fancy. This is it. I'm in a galley kitchen. I'm in a condo. Okay. So this is it. There's nothing else hiding. So what I like to do is start with a little broth, and then I get some really yummy, smoky spices in, and both of these are going to pull out some umami flavor. So I'm going to use a little chipotle chili, and I'm going to put this in the broth, and I'm going to kind of make a little bit of a slurry. Now, the thing that I'm doing here is I want to caramelize onions. Well, typically when we think about caramelizing onions, we're going to use a little oil and then a pinch of sugar. I'm doing this different, and I want to show you how beautiful this slurry looks. Let's see how this will go. I actually will bring the pot up to you, and you can see, just look how this rich, thick color. This is just 2 spices and a little veggie broth. But what I'm going to do now is put my onions that I've sliced into half-moon slices. And I'm not really going to caramelize them because I'm really way too lazy to do that. Like, I'm not going to sit around for 30 minutes or whatever. Well, it's time for that. I just like to add a lot of flavor and get it going. But the other thing that I'm going to do today, AJ follows me and she gets my newsletter. So she knows a little bit about me. So let's just say I like me some craft beer and I like me some wine. And I was in Salida last weekend, and I went to a distillery where they make their own gin, and I had this jalapeno infused gin, sort of like amazing cocktail that they made with the gin that was infused, simple syrup, and then fresh lime juice. So I decided to try a simple syrup this week with no sugar. So I just put dates in water and boiled it for 10 minutes and drained it. It reduced about 1/3 of a cup and turned it into a simple syrup. But I am one to never, I want to use as many things as I can as possible. So I kept those dates. And when you caramelize onions traditionally, start with a little oil, you put your onions in, and you might put a pinch of sugar in. I'm actually just going to chop up some of these dates that I use for my simple syrup, just to give it a little bit of that sweetness. I mean, when we're caramelizing onions, we're not looking for sweet. We want the onion I'll show you how I'm going to do this. We want the onion it's sweet. It's going to start to sweat from the cooking process, but I'm just going to take some of these medjool dates and I'm just going to put them in for just a little bit of sweetness. But this is what they look like. I'm probably going to put them on my oatmeal this week. Okay, so we'll come back here. You don't need to look at my, okay. So I'm just going to not, like I said, I'm cheating. I'm not going to really caramelize these, but I'm going to boost the heat up. And what I always do, I want to show you one of the things that I really like and why I always have veggie broth around. And I know, AJ, I think you actually used one of my veggie broth recipes.
Yeah,
one of your books,
absolutely. Right? JL's version of homemade broth is in this book. It's like the easiest. It's basically free, is what it is.
It is. It's like all the scraps of everything. Like I always save my mushroom stems. I save apple cores. I save sometimes a little lemon or lime. You got to be careful with the acidic. But the reason I'm always making a homemade broth and having it ready is I just have this next to me while I'm cooking, so that if I'm doing something on a higher heat and I'm trying to not to use too much liquid. And I think some of you know that, like if you're trying to do a saute, like I remember having a book editor one time where I was like, well, we're going to saute it in broth just in case people are avoiding oil. And she's like, that's not called sauteing. That's called cooking. And I was like, listen, I can make up any rules I want and we're going to call it that. But you do know that you don't want it to be too liquidy and that you're steaming or cooking. So I just like to have a little broth on hand so that if this starts to stick, I can just pour it in a little bit. But this is getting a really, really nice color. And so I'm going to pretend like we caramelized these. But clearly we didn't, because I would have gone a little bit longer and a little bit higher, because I'm trying to avoid adding that broth just yet. So now what I'm going to add to this, let's make sure I've added everything. Aha. So I made some beans in advance in my little Instant Pot, and I'm going to grab, and by little, I actually really mean little. I have, the 3-quart one. So I'm going to do this without hurting myself.
Are you in Colorado Springs?
I am.
Well, we have Luann watching. Do you know her?
Hi, Luann. Have you been taking my classes, Luann?
Because she said she's from Colorado Springs, so that would be kind of cool.
So look at these yummy. Has she taken a class? Did she think?
I hope she answers.
I hope she does too. Luann, we're waiting. Here, I'm going to show you these beans. Look at these gorgeous beans.
They look so rich.
Beans in the pot. Don't they look amazing? I did the dark ones. So I'm just going to put probably the equivalent, try not to get this bay leaf, about the equivalent of a can. So that was 1 large Vidalia sweet onion. And just to recap, little veggie broth and some chipotle chili and some smoked paprika. So I'm bringing in, so right now in this pot, I have just added 3 umami elements. And that is the caramelization of the onions, and it's the 2 spices. So now I'm just going to combine this together. And then I'm going to just,
I was going to say great minds think alike, because you have literally used my 2 favorite spices, smoked paprika and chipotle. And I don't know why, but because when I don't use salt, there's something about those 2 that just you don't miss the salt when when you combine those two spices.
Exactly. Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I didn't know that. So I just want to do just a little broth. This bean dish is designed to have a little bit of broth so that you could serve it over a cooked grain, or you could dip in some crusty bread. And so I want just enough for the flavor and for the broth, but not too much. And for those of you who do have an Instant Pot, you can absolutely make this either with dry beans or with cans. Just as an FYI, if that concept is new to you, if you have a recipe that calls for dry beans, so let's say they say soak your beans overnight and cook for 10 minutes, high pressure, natural release. You could take canned beans or beans that had been previously cooked and use the same recipe. And if you're not cooking another grain or something else that needs to cook a long time, you can do it on low pressure for about 3 minutes, quick release. And you can basically take a dry bean recipe and do it quicker with some canned beans. So that's just kind of an FYI. So now I'm going to move this over. I'll bring it up so you can see it. And you can see that we've just got like lots of bubbly, thick broth. So we've got our onions, we've got our beans, and then I'll give you the spoiler alert, which is that when we're done, and AJ, I don't know where you stand on this, but since you said it doesn't matter that I can cook however I want, I'm going to be using miso, red miso in it.
Yeah.
Miso paste is another umami element. And so it's fermented. And so that's one thing to think about when you're thinking about umami foods. And we're going to talk more about that. I just wanted to get the food going, and then we can, take questions about umami. But remember, we're trying to bring out this like meatiness. And so some of the things that can do that are fermented foods, like a soy sauce or a tamari or a miso paste or pickled vegetables. Like I make my own, where did I put? I have some umami tricks for you. I make my own cucumbers and onions, and I just pickle them myself. And this is just something you could add to a salad and suddenly turn it into an umami rich salad just by adding some pickled vegetables. Are there any questions?
I'm looking. I just want to say there's somebody else watching from Colorado Springs named Stephanie.
Oh.
And there's somebody that's you know her?
I do.
All right. And then
Pretty sure I know you, Stephanie.
Bedeman or Bead Mom, I'm not sure, says, I've taken all your pandemic classes as well as many at your place in downtown Springs. You are absolutely wonderful and fun.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing. Thank you. That means a lot. Okay, let's keep going with another umami dish. So again, you guys, I'm just trying to show you, I come into my kitchen, it's the end of the day, I want something delicious, and I want to make sure that I'm getting all the umami with it. Oh my goodness, this is just like going.
Question from Jennifer: How do you
Jennifer.
How do you pickle your own cucumber and onions?
So the way I do it with this one, I use some soy sauce and rice vinegar, and I just heat it up quickly and I just pour it in. And you know what I did? It's actually going to be in my next book. I also use some kombu. And so the kombu, instead of which is I don't know if I have it handy. Kombu is seaweed. And sometimes when people are cooking dry beans, instead of using bay leaf, they'll use kombu. And I use that in my pickles, and it lasts such a long time in the refrigerator. I've had this for probably 6 weeks. And so it's just super simple, but the soy sauce and the vinegar are the two things that bring out the umami. And then becoming pickled, it also is just like sort of this really multi-layered flavor. Sorry, I have this on the, I should pay attention to what I'm doing. Okay, so here's the other thing I'm going to show you that I love to do. So when I was saying, when I come into the kitchen and it's time to cook, what I always ask myself is, what's the umami element that I can add to what I'm cooking, so that I can take something that might seem super simple, like 2 ingredients, it could be a potato, it could be tofu, or in this case, it's actually going to be cabbage, but the cabbage is going to pop when I saute it with sun-dried tomatoes and with mushrooms. So I want to show you, you can get sun-dried tomatoes that are actually truly dry and in a package. And so they're not packed in oil. They're not even packed in water. And you can rehydrate them any way that you want. So I rehydrate them with warm veggie broth. So I've had these sun-dried tomatoes just sitting in this broth. And this broth is actually how I'm going to start the saute. But I'm also going to chop my sun-dried tomatoes to get the saute going with mushrooms. So mushrooms, any kind of mushroom, these are fresh. These are dry. I'm going to talk about dry in a minute because I'm going to get back to those spices that you love, AJ. And so I just have chunky pieces of mushroom that are going to do two things. The mushroom itself is going to bring out the umami flavor, but the way I chose to chop them is to give it a meaty texture. So when you bite into it, you're feeling something beyond the crunch of a quickly sauteed cabbage, and you're just getting sort of that mouth feel that, again, could be pleasing to somebody who doesn't eat the way you do. And if you're trying to make food that like everyone's like, yeah, I'm in, who cares if it's vegan or whatever. So so what I'm going to do, it is, by the way, the people who take my classes know this. It is so hot in here right now. I do not have air conditioning. It's 93 degrees. There was a time where you didn't need air conditioning in Colorado Springs, but you know, something happened to our environment. I think we're all aware. So I want to get these chopped up for you, and I'm going to show you these gorgeous, gorgeous sun-dried tomatoes and how they've plumped up from the broth. So this is just warm broth. These were sun-dried, nothing but a sun-dried tomato in a package. And I'm going to chop them up to get a really nice saute going. And you don't need to see all those things, right? And the other thing that I love about sun-dried tomatoes, and I don't know if you do you do sun-dried tomatoes?
I love sun-dried tomatoes. They
amazing?
make, you don't need that much because there's, you know, they said something like it takes 4 pounds of tomatoes to make a 3-ounce bag.
Oh, really? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's why they're so flavorful. Do you have a favorite spice shop in Colorado Springs?
I go to, here we go. I just wanted you to see this. So I go to a couple of places for my spices. I go to the Savory Spice Shop. It's downtown, and I live really close to downtown. So I'm kind of loyal to them. But also, oh my gosh, the sizzle. I wish you could hear it. I wonder if you can hear it if I put my ears here. And I'm going to put this broth. Think what happened to that broth from taking in all that sun-dried tomatoes. So I don't just have the sun-dried tomatoes now. That broth is super rich. And so this one is going to be way too big and heavy to show you. So I'm just going to kind of lift it up a little bit for you to see what this looks like with these rich, rich sun-dried tomatoes. But now what I want to do is get these mushrooms in. And I'll tell you more about the spices. You know where I go to? So we have Natural Grocers, which is a grocery store, West Coast sort of grocery store. So I'll buy a lot of their spices in bulk. But when they say bulk, they don't mean what you and I mean. It's not scooping it out. It's just actually, they have already have it packaged, but it's really great prices. But I spend a lot of time at the Asian Pacific market. I get my vinegars, hot sauces, lots of grains, organic grains in bulk at really great prices because lots of people who are in the restaurant industry are using that restaurant or that grocery store. So I get tons of spices from there. So now I have the sun-dried tomatoes in the broth has already soaked up. It's in a cast iron skillet. I'm adding a little rice vinegar. So vinegar is one of an umami ingredient. And I have all kinds of vinegar. So here, I'm just going to put some red cabbage in here directly in. And I'm going to do a really, really quick saute. And I'll let you see a little bit of what's happening here. So I've got these mushrooms are in here, my sun-dried tomatoes, purple cabbage. And so I'm kind of funny about my veggies. And again, this is where you use your broth. If it starts to stick a little bit, just a little broth in there, not too much, just to keep things going. I really like to know that I'm eating a vegetable. And what I mean by that is, like, I like some crunch. So if I'm going to have cabbage, I want to have the crunch of the cabbage. So I don't saute my veggies too terribly long because I want a variety of textures. And for people who might be new to eating vegan or plant-based, some of your challenges early on might be creating flavor profiles, trying to figure out how to get out that sort of savory, umami, meaty pop in the foods that you're cooking. And also sometimes you might get in a little bit of a texture rut. So, and you know, if those of us who've been doing it for a while, like I could just eat a hippie bowl every single night of the week. Give me beans, give me grains, give me a vegetable, I'm done, right? But sometimes you're just like, wow, I just had mushy on mushy on mushy. And you want a little variety. So the way you might switch it up a little bit is maybe put some raw spiralized zucchini in a bowl and then put cooked vegetables over it and then maybe add a grain. But what you've done is just kind of lightly wilt the raw veggie with the warm beans. And then when you're taking a bite, you're experiencing crunch as well as the cooked stuff. This is already done and it's gorgeous, if I do say so myself. I'm going to take it off the heat, and I'm going to check on my beans in a minute, but let me plate this for you guys so you can see what this beautiful, beautiful cabbage looks like. And I'm happy to take any questions while I'm doing this, or AJ, if you have questions for me.
Yeah, no, let me see. I wanted to tell you, there's a spice company that's in Tiburon, and his name is Local Spicery, and he has some really delicious spices that are just very unique flavors. Like one is a pepperoni spice, and I really like it.
Okay, that sounds amazing. And it just reminded me when I was at the Nashville Veg Fest, there's this guy there who has, it's called Zelda and Bramble Superlative Seasonings. So this is a sashimi togarashi. It's orange peel, Sancho poppy seeds, sesame seeds, chili, and garlic, and nori. That's it. This is an umami bomb right here.
That sounds amazing that it has nori in it.
Good?
Where did you, and can you get that online?
Yeah, you can. And it's Zelda. Although, I don't know with the pandemic, I went to order some things recently and it said everything was sold out. And I thought, good, because I want all the businesses to sell out rather than have all their stuff there. But it's Zelda and Bramble. Look at those
that sounds amazing.
It's so good. And that's just one of them. Here's another one. It's their Border Radio Blend. Look, you're going to love this. Cocoa powder, chipotle, bell pepper, smoked paprika, allspice, annatto, onion, cumin, garlic, cinnamon.
That is so cool that instead of salt, they're using, I got to get in touch with them because that sounds like an amazing type of idea that they have.
Doesn't that sound good? Okay, so here's my really quick, look at these beautiful sun-dried tomatoes. You've got this. This is the kind of thing that you can do as a side dish. And here's my mushroom. I'm going to eat it.
Oh my God, that looks so good.
It's so good. And you guys, if you just did this, you saw how long that took. That was like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think people need to, I love that you're doing this instead of recipes because people are just so attached to recipes. And I even on Instagram, I'm like, you guys don't need recipes. You need to eat food. You got to cook food and eat food.
And that's why when you asked me what I wanted to talk about, I said I wanted to talk about umami, because I think the more people get familiar with that term, you will actually start to tap into your own intuitive cook. You're not trusting yourself enough, you guys. I'm here to tell you that. I'm also here to tell you that 10 years ago, I wasn't trusting myself enough either. I was a brand new baby vegan. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was actually Messina, Jenny and Jack Norris wrote the book Vegan for Life. And the new updated version just came out a few months ago. And she was the one who said, umami is the secret ingredient to plant-based cooking. And once I started, and then I became a nerd. I'm a nerd about everything I get excited about. And I started researching it. And it's like, that's what I want you to do. Like we had mushrooms, we had cabbage, and with a little rice vinegar, some rehydrated sun-dried tomatoes in warm veggie broth, and this cabbage, we put this together. But now, wait for it. So this could be a side, right? But I just made some kidney beans today, and boy, do the colors match. Now I add kidney beans on top. I just made a hippie bowl. I've got my whole meal. I've got my cabbage. I've got my mushrooms. I've got my beans. And so again, just a reminder, especially if you're new to this, is that when you are thinking about what to eat, just think of no matter how people eat within this realm of vegan and plant-based, 5 things never change: our food groups: vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, legumes and beans, and grains, period. So if you don't know what to do when you come home and you want to cook, those are the 5 things. It's what you do with them that changes what it tastes like. Okay. So now let me very quickly do this final step to my umami beans. So first I want you to we'll just look and see how we've done with the broth is super yummy. I'm going to show you what's happening here. So we've got a nice thick broth, but it's going to get thicker, you guys. And this is one of the little secrets to all of this. Let me shut this off. So I'm going to use a little miso for those of you who use miso. So that is going to be my salt, is going to be my miso. So I have 2 here. I'm going to show you both. For those of you who are soy free, there's a chickpea soy miso that you can get. This one has no soy in it. I'm not soy free, and I love things to match, kind of like I like my shoes to match with my handbag, whatever. I like my food to match. And since I have such a red, rich bean and this really red from the chipotle and the paprika, I'm going to use the red miso. So some of you may or may not know that when you are cooking with miso, miso tastes delicious, but there are people who, like, if you make miso soup, you don't put the miso in while you're cooking. You take it out for, you take the food off the heat, you add miso to the broth and then pour it back in, and you don't cook it. And because miso's fermented, so you still get that probiotic effect. Now I tell you that, but I'm also going to toss some Brussels sprouts in some miso and a little vinegar and roast them, and it's going to be delicious. Am I going to get the probiotic effect from it? No, who cares? I came for the food. I'm just going to eat it, and it's going to be delicious. But I did want to show this to you in case it's something you're interested in seeing. So I'm going to move the camera a little bit. So what I will do is take my broth out and put it into a larger measuring cup, which you can't exactly see, but I'm going to show you. And now I've taken the beans off of the heat. So there's no boiling, there's nothing going on here. Did you have a question, AJ?
Yeah, I tried to Google Zelda and Bramble, and it kept saying not found. I wonder if they possibly went out of business.
Oh, I hope not. I just checked them. I was checking in on all my favorite companies once COVID happened, just to see how I could, like, every week. This is a true story. For those of you who take my classes, you probably already figured this out. So my classes, for the pandemic classes, were free. And just FYI, they're still free. They're sliding scale now, so people can register for $0. But I started taking tips because girls got to eat. I had to close down my cooking academy. But basically every Sunday after a class, I would then go online and I would order things from vegan companies because I wanted the vegan companies to do well. So this was from the Compassion Co., Andy Tabar's. So I want you to see this broth, or this miso that's in here. So you can use a whisk or you can use a fork. I actually find a fork does a little bit better. And I'm just whisking this up because it's going to turn it nice and thick. And this is going to be my salt, or an additional layer of flavor. But let's go through what I've already done. Caramelized onion, one form of umami. Chipotle pepper, second form. Smoked paprika, third form. Miso, fourth form. Mushrooms, 5. So talk about going overboard, am I right? So, and this is going to just make this really rich dish. Now I'm going to tell you the story behind my umami Anasazi beans. So I was writing the book, Vegan Pressure Cooking, and AJ knows because she's written books. When you're writing a cookbook and they want like 100 recipes and you're on number 67, you get desperate. You're like, what can I invent right now for a good recipe? Well, I went to my pantry and I found a bag of Anasazi beans. They're beautiful. They're kind of a Southwestern bean, and they're flecked with like white and like a deep red, almost like a wine colored burgundy. And I looked on the back of the package, and of course it says to cook with ham hocks. And I was like, okay, so wait, so how do I do a vegan version of this? And I thought about my dad's. He always made navy beans and ham on Sundays during the winter for football day. And it was a winter day that I did this. So that's when I grabbed mushrooms, and I grabbed, I do liquid smoke in the original recipe. I'm not going to do that for this one. And I just started grabbing things to sort of do a vegan version that was reminiscent of. And the first time I made this this recipe for a class, this was years ago, I was co-teaching a class with Michael Suchman, who he and his husband Ethan have the Vegan Mo's, and they wrote NYC Vegan cookbook. And we were teaching a class on how to cook vegan for your non-vegan family. And so he made us really yummy, he's a fantastic cook, this dish of like a beef bourguignon. And I did this recipe. And I had 2 people come up to me afterwards. And the first person came up to me, he was a young college student here in Colorado Springs, a football player. And he's like, if this is vegan, I can eat vegan. And I was like, okay, yay. And then this woman came up to me, she's in the military, and she's like, I can't eat this. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she said, I went vegan 11 years ago and I haven't had meat, and I feel like I was just eating ham. So of course I said, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. And then when she walked away, I was like, yes, because I was trying to get out these flavors that somebody who wasn't vegan or plant-based would be like, yeah, I totally want to eat this. So now look at this really thick sauce. This is from the broth that came from the beans. I just whisked the miso in there, and now I'm just going to stir this in, and it is done. And I'm gonna spoon it into a bowl so you can see what this could look like. I serve it over my mushroom rice. I have a mushroom rice recipe. It might be on my website too. By the way, this Umami Anasazi beans recipe is on my website. It just doesn't have the modifications I've made today. But if you just type in jlgoesvegan.com, Umami Anasazi, trust me, it's gonna come up. I also have a recipe, mushroom rice, which is simply sauteed mushrooms, and then I threw the brown rice in the pot with veggie broth and pressure cooked it in the Instant Pot for like 22 minutes, high pressure, natural release. That base with these beans is absolutely delicious. But I want to show you how yummy and slurpy. Slurpy is one of my favorite words that some people think is, but this is just like a very, very simple. Where's my fork? I like that I get to eat. Well, I don't always feel a little bad, but look at this. So just look at this thickness here. You can add shiitake mushrooms or any kind of mushroom. Any questions on this recipe before I move on to the?
No, but you know what I wanted to ask you, because when people go vegan, for whatever reason, it's almost like they have forgotten how to make food. When most people that I know, if they weren't eating just junk food, like they would make a meal and it would have like some dead animal on the plate and then maybe some vegetable and some starch. And then they go vegan and it's all of a sudden like they're rendered helpless, like they don't know what to eat, when really they still know how to make the other things. They just need to either make a greater volume. You know what I'm trying to say? It's not like the people I know were making a recipe every night of whatever meat dish. They were, grilling some chicken or having a thing of fish. And now that they're vegan, it's like, I don't know what to eat.
Exactly. Well, you know what? And I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because I talk about this a lot in my classes, and especially when I'm working with new vegans. You know how like we vegans, we're all probably guilty of it. When someone says, where do you get your protein? And we all want a heavy eye roll and sigh, and I always say, if it's someone I know and I think they're being snarky, I say to them, how much protein do I need? And since they don't know, the conversation ends, because for some reason we're obsessed about protein, but you don't know what I need. But I don't say that. And I actually don't get flustered, frustrated by this question anymore at all, because I know that's not the question. This is somebody who their whole life, they have grown up and lived their life eating a plate of food in which it starts with the animal and then other things happen around it. And so they literally don't know how to replace it. So I think where people get tripped up is they forget they already knew how to make the sides. You've been eating vegan all your life. Trust me. You've been eating your salads. You've been eating cucumbers and onions that grandma made during the summer. You're eating corn on the cob. You're eating vegan, but you have always planned your meal around the meat. And so if you remember all those things that you loved around it, and then just make the tweaks necessary to not use lard or baking grease or butter, because there's plenty of vegan options now. You can make all of those things, but probably I'd say 50% probably were vegan anyway. It's the piece that you need to replace. That's the bean and the legume, right? Or just some higher protein foods like a quinoa, or even if you're doing something like with pistachios or with peanuts. And so it's just rethinking what you used to think of was the center of the plate. Now what you want on your plate is actually about a quarter of that protein, whatever that's going to be, your tofu, your tempeh, your beans, your edamame on a salad. And then you're going to want another quarter on that plate of your grain or your starchy vegetable like sweet potatoes or my jam. I'm eating them all the frickin' time. I love my starchy vegetables in the fall. And the rest of that plate, veggies, baby, it's veggies. And so if you really break it down in that way, you realize that's not hard to do. I can cook a vegetable. And I can cook lots of vegetables, or I can just make that cabbage dish and fill up half my plate with cabbage and mushrooms and sun-dried tomatoes with this great vinegar taste. And then just put a dollop of millet. Maybe you made some millet in your Instant Pot. And then, you know what I did with millet this week? I ramble all the time. You know, I do this, AJ, sorry. But
that's all right. That's why I like you. Makes it easy for me.
Tomorrow's class is on creating flavor profiles. And so I told you that we made this jalapeno infused gin this week. So when we took the jalapenos out, I diced them up. And Dave, my husband, he used about a quarter of them in a tofu marinade, and he air fried the tofu. I took the other quarter of that, put it in a sauce for the tofu, and then I saw what I had left over, and I mixed it into leftover millet. I cook my grains and my beans with no seasoning whatsoever, because I don't know where they're destined. I don't know what I'll do with them in a couple of days. So why not just leave the completely blank slate and start with the actual food, and then decide what little bit might it need based on everything else. And since I already had a super flavorful tofu, super flavorful sauce, I didn't need to do anything to that millet other than just toss it when I reheated it with a little bit of that chopped jalapeno. And so that's another way just to add some flavor. So when you are thinking about how to make that beautiful plate, remember, you can put lots of flavor all around it and really pull it together.
Yeah. And they have to remember to eat more food. Like, you can't just, if you were eating standard or just eating meat as a big portion of your food, you can't just take it away and eat a couple of sides. You've got to eat more. You got to eat more starch. You can't just eat more vegetables and be satisfied. And I think the mistake a lot of people make is that when they become vegan, they just don't eat enough food.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they can just kind of think, well, if I'm vegan, then I'm just eating vegetables. And I don't say just because, because vegetables are awesome, obviously, but no, we have such a robust, nutrients and food groups that we can eat from. Okay, so let me show you the final thing, but I also really am going to talk about umami, and I really want to answer questions about umami. But what I'm going to do is show you a very simple massaged kale salad. I'm going to try to move some of this mess out of the way.
So we've got some bad news. Zelda and Bramble are out of business. You had me so excited. That would have been such an amazing kind of seasoning that we use as actual.
I'm so sad. Well, then I'm going to have to really covet mine, aren't I? And or also, what I'm going to do, take a picture of my labels and kind of make them. And I'm going to actually talk about a spice blend that I've made that I actually used for my broth, because it's great. I want to support companies that are doing things like this. But then, I don't know if you do the same thing, AJ, but if I've ever had something that I really loved, I was like, well, what's in it? And it doesn't give the recipe on the label, but it gives the ingredients, and then you can just start to kind of play around. So I'm going to show you a kale salad. I know, so vegan, right? How unoriginal, but it is actually going to be around umami. So first off, I just wanted to show you, I always save kale stems when I'm making a kale salad, and I put them in the freezer. My little puppy, he's not a puppy, he's a 3-year-old dog, Harry.
Your pets are Harry. What are your pets' names?
Harry and Oliver.
Harry and Oliver.
Yep.
It should have been Harry and David. No, just kidding.
I know. You know what? We always choose orphan, because we rescue animals, and so we always choose an orphan name. So Oliver is Oliver Twist, and Harry is Harry Potter. So
that's cute.
But Harry's a little pug chihuahua, so like this looks huge on him, and he's so excited when he gets a frozen piece of kale stem. So I always hold on to them. But I wanted to show you, for those of you who have not made kale salad, or when you are using your kale and you're always pulling out a knife to chop this, please stop it. You just go like this. Yep. Did you see what just happened? Yeah. That's it.
Well, that's all you do. You're a stripper.
Sure. Yeah, right. Exactly. So I'm gonna put the camera down so you can see what's gonna happen. This is a very basic kale salad, massage kale salad. So the trick with kale salad, and the reason you hear people refer to it as massaged, is because for it to really, well, especially for people who don't eat a lot of kale, you really want to break that down. And there's a way, a lot of people do it with a sprinkle of salt, maybe some olive oil, but I'm going to show you an umami rich way to do this. But it's also going to require me showing you a couple of other things that I do. So in my upcoming book, I think it's coming out in October, I have a very simple, I've done this in my classes before, but I have a very simple approach to a flavorful vinegar. I love vinegars because I just think it's a great way to make a simple way to bring umami into it. But what I did was I made my own. You know how you can go to those stores and it's like the olive tap or something, like you can go through and taste the different oils, and you can go through and taste the different vinegars. I just make my own. I'm a cheap person, I guess. So I just take plain balsamic vinegar. That's it, balsamic vinegar, and a dried fruit that's not, there's nothing added, just plain dried fruit. These are cranberries. I combined the two, and I made a cranberry balsamic vinegar. And I leave this on my counter for a couple of days. And then once it's kind of been sitting around for a while, I'll strain the cranberries out, and then I'll just keep the vinegar in my refrigerator, and it can last a very long time. But what I'm going to do is drizzle a little of this cranberry vinegar over the kale while I'm massaging it. And then I'll add some of the cranberries when I'm tossing it with some hemp seeds.
Hey, you're blowing my mind. You're blowing my mind. Every day on the show, I learned something. This is like amazing. Like yesterday, I learned there was something called a solar cooker. I never heard of a solar cooker. I mean,
what is that? You know, we love appliances.
Okay, it's not even an appliance. It's like you can make it. It was her name was Kathy Mesquita. She was making Indian food from the Sacramento area, and it's like you get this piece of cardboard and it's reflective, and like you cook your beans and rice outside. It blew my mind. Solar cooking.
Okay, so I'm going to watch that because that's on your YouTube channel, so I can watch that, right?
But this is like amazing because you may not know this, but every guest on the show that lives in the United States gets 2 free samples of California balsamic vinegar in the flavors of their choice. So you're going to have fun with that. But I mean, just to do what you're doing, I'm already thinking, which dried fruits do I have in the house? I have kiwi, I have prunes, I have golden raisins, and I have dates. So I'm going to try, you know, I'm going to try this as soon as we get
have
off.
to. So that makes me so happy because I thought you're going to be like, oh my God, that's so boring and dull. And then,
are you kidding? This is amazing. And we can all make our own flavors.
Yes, I love it. And in the holiday season, I'll take this kale salad. I'll do I'll do dried cranberries and dried cherries in the balsamic. And then instead of using a lemon juice or lime juice, I use orange juice. And it just has this like holiday feel to it, you know, and you've got the bright, plump, red, rehydrated cherries and cranberries. But I'm gonna use a little, I'm not going to use oil today to make this salad. I'm going to use a really ripe avocado, and that's how I'm going to start massaging this. And so I'm just going to, I have gloves on because, I mean, it's my own house. I can touch my food, right? But I have rings on one. And I always joke and say, I want all the food to stay there. So you all know this trick. I'm not teaching you anything new, but that's how you get your seed out. And then since I have my gloves on, I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just digging in here, and I just scooped out the avocado. So I always have these gloves around because I love to touch my food, and sometimes it's just a little bit easier. And I use a ton of peppers, and gloves are super helpful when you're using really spicy peppers. So I'm going to bring this down, try not to put avocado on my laptop. So I'm taking this avocado and I'm just massaging it into this kale. And while I'm doing it, I'm tearing the kale into bite-sized pieces. So right now, all I have going on here, you can already see how much the kale just reduced in size from this simple 10, 15 second massage with this kale. But what this, or with this avocado, what this avocado also does is it coats the leaves. So when you think about going out to a restaurant, or maybe you used to make like a Caesar salad yourself, we're getting the texture and the creaminess that we expected from a salad like that, but we're getting it just straight up from the avocado. So I'm going to stop because I want to have some of my kale left. I'm really massaging the heck out of it really quickly. So now I'm just going to add a little bit. See, I'm trying to get all that good stuff in there. I'm going to add a little bit of the fruited cranberry balsamic, just a bit. I don't need much.
That looks amazing.
And then I'm going to dig out some of the cranberries because, hello, we came for the good food too, right? So look at how they've plumped up. So they've just plumped up from sitting for about 2 days on my counter in this balsamic vinegar. And then I'm going to show you my secret ingredient. It's not a secret. Most of us are not inventing anything new. I'm going to add hemp seeds, and that's going to kind of give me that Parmesan expectation from a salad. And then I'm just going to toss it really quickly with some tongs. And let me plate this for you. Let's get a few of those really pretty colors on top. And there you have a very simple avocado, kale, cranberry balsamic salad.
That looks super amazing. Simple. And that would be great for Thanksgiving with the cranberry.
Delicious. So here we've got our umami elements. Here are the balsamic, cranberry balsamic. We've got now our cabbage, that the umami elements are the mushrooms, the rice vinegar that we used, and the sun-dried tomatoes. And we added a few beans on top to turn it into a meal. And then the umami elements in this bean dish are a caramelization of the onions, smoked paprika, chipotle chili powder, and also the miso. And so those are simple ways. And I'm hoping that what happens is you hear those ingredients, and what this result is you can kind of get an idea of the essence of umami. Now, I don't know how long you want to go, and I'm just going to tell you a couple more things, you guys, and then I'll
we
take
usually
any
go an
questions.
hour if you have the time, if you have another
Okay,
10
I
minutes.
totally have the time. We have 10
Great.
minutes. So I just wanted to show you a few other ways umami happens in my kitchen. So as I told you, I have mushrooms are an umami element. These are dried mushrooms. This is tomato powder, straight up tomato powder. I get this at the Savory Spice Shop. And tomatoes, ripe tomatoes, are an umami element. I'm showing you these because in the book that's coming out in the fall, I'm trying to remember what I think I called it Spicy Umami Blend. I start with some dried mushrooms, and I have some tomato powder and some nutritional yeast and a bunch of smoky, spicy spices. And it's low. I have one version that has no salt at all. One is very little salt, and then one has more. And it's just as simple. I put this in the hot water today, and that was my veggie broth. But this is one way to bring umami out of your food when you're cooking. And if you're somebody who is using less or little salt, this can be a nice salt alternative. So I wanted you to see that. And then I already talked about my pickles. Did I show you my pickles or just talk to you about them?
You
I'll
didn't
show you
show us your pickles. How dare you?
Oh, I know. And you all should know me by now. I'll show you my pickles. So here are my umami. I mean, they're umami anyway because they're pickled, but I made it with vinegar and soy sauce. And so they are super yummy. They've got, and remember kombu and seaweed, kombu, nori, like when you go out for sushi, vegan sushi, and you're eating that, you know, the umami is coming from the seaweed. And so when it's wrapped up in a nori sheet, every time you're taking a bite, you're getting a meatiness, you're getting a sense of savory and a sense of satiety. Some other cool vinegars that I love. This is a banana vinegar, and I absolutely adore that. I have tons
banana
of
vinegar?
Yes.
Where did you get it?
Somebody gifted it to me. My students here in Colorado Springs, because they know I'm ridiculous about umami, they will like travel somewhere and they'll come back and they're like, I brought you a present. It is always umami, which I love. That's how ridiculous I am about it. So this brand, let's see, Viagre no, that's not it. Casa Saint Ivale. So Casa and then ST and then IVALET. And it's banana vinegar, really fun to use. And then I just have like coconut water vinegar. My cupboard is filled with vinegars. When I'm teaching classes, I always tell my students, I want you to build up your umami pantry, but don't go broke. Make a list of the kinds of things that aren't in your pantry yet. Have them on a side of your grocery shopping list. And every week when you go to the store, buy one more thing and add that to your refrigerator with your miso paste, or add that to your pantry or to your cupboard. And so over time, you're starting to build this arsenal of flavor, because at the grocery store, it's really simple. Go into the produce section and buy all the things. And then go and get yourself some dried beans or some canned beans. Go get yourself some tofu, some tempeh, get yourself your grains, right? Get some nuts and seeds. And then open up your pantry and your cupboards, and that's where you start to cook. I mean, sometimes don't even think about the ingredient. Think about the flavor profile of like, I think I want something with hatch green chilies this week. Okay, that made me think of tomatoes, and it made me think of fall. So now what am I going to do with that? Like what, maybe I could grill some corn, but then smother it with like some chipotle and maybe like kind of create a mashed up hatch green chili that you roll it in and pretend like it's butter. I mean, there's so many ways you can get playful with all these different ingredients. And then I'm trying to think, one of my students brought me the bottle broke. I took it on vacation. Of course, this will not surprise you, AJ. Dave and I took a 4-day getaway over the weekend, and obviously I took my air fryer, duh. And I took like 5 bottles of vinegar. And this one is actually a red chili pepper balsamic glaze, and just a little will do. But I'm hoping that that's making you guys think like, okay, I got it. So I want to quickly just kind of tell you a couple of the things that might remind you about what is umami. So ripe and sun-dried tomatoes, ketchup. We make our own ketchup. Dave, my husband, I'm like so grateful, makes our homemade ketchup every single week. I have a ketchup recipe that's going to be in the new book, and it's a smoky ketchup recipe that's sweetened with, wait for it, dates. Okay, wine is umami. Soy sauce, nutritional yeast, toasted nuts and seeds, savory spices, different kinds of broth, miso, dried sea vegetables like dulse flakes, like kombu, like nori sheets, olives, pickled olives, capers, all of these things you can start to add to some of your food, and you're just putting in a tablespoon of umami. All kinds of vinegars, fermented foods, including sauerkraut, kimchi. So when and the umbashi plums, and then the ways that you can add umami when you're cooking is to caramelize, grilling. If any of my students are here, they've heard this story before. Umami came to life for me in my home. So when I went vegan, my husband did not. Spoiler alert, he's now vegan. He's been vegan for about 5 years, I think. So I was always trying to make something that was like yummy for all of us. He's a great cook, and he was a great vegan cook even before he was vegan. But he really focused sort of like on the entree and the starchy side, or the grain. And I'd be like, honey, vegetables, please. Or can we have a salad? And he's like, if you want one. And so one day after I was investigating and learning about umami, I decided to test the theory. So I took a head of romaine lettuce and I sliced it in half. So I had the flat sides up, and I drizzled a little olive oil over it, fresh lemon juice, pressed some minced garlic into it, little salt, little pepper, took it out on the grill, 1 minute flat side down, flipped it over for 30 seconds, came back, chopped it up as is, threw it in a bowl, and it was a warm grilled romaine salad, and he devoured it. And it proved to me what a grill can do. So like if you're trying to quickly, it's hot right now, it's summertime, you don't want to have all the burners going that I just had going. Turn your grill on, take a tomato, slice it, and put it on one of the grill grates for 30 seconds. You just turned that tomato into an umami bomb simply from being on the grill. So that's one technique. The caramelization of onions, the roasting and braising when you're using things like vinegar, all of those things can bring umami out. So with that, that was basically what I had to say to you. And I am happy to just like shut up and answer any questions right now. And you can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be umami.
Right. Well, people are loving this. So guys, if you have any specific questions, ask away. Do you ever use jalapeno powder?
No, but I need this in my life now.
Yeah, because I was, I had Chef Ramses Bravo was here, and we were social distancing, but he was on his way, and he passed my house, and so I did a live one of these with him, and he was in my kitchen, and I was here, and I left. He did like an Iron Chef. I left him a bunch of ingredients, and I wish people would pretend they weren't an Iron Chef and cook the way that you cook today instead of relying on recipes. But he had tasted one of these recipes that I made, a lemon poppy seed dressing. He said, it needs something, and I find that when somebody says that to me, the tiniest pinch, not a lot, of jalapeno pepper, it's powdered. It wakes. I don't know if it's umami, but you don't need so much that it's spicy. But even like a 1/16 of a teaspoon in a recipe, it just does something.
You know what? I love that idea, and I'm actually going to move something. I'm going to show you something. I don't know if you've seen it, AJ, but I know that you're really into air fry. So I made a recipe recently. It was actually very decadent. It was an apple pie crumble that I was trying to do like a McDonald's version, but obviously vegan. It was so good. Yeah. But I learned through researching that the secret to the McDonald's apple pie is that they use powdered apples, like dehydrated apples. Oh. And I was like, I can do that. So I took an apple, dehydrated it all day long, and then I ground it in my Vitamix and added it to the pie filling, which the pie filling was literally apples and cinnamon. And wow, was it amazing. But what it just made me think of, imagine drying your own jalapenos with a dehydrator and then just grinding. I mean, what a great way for all these people, all you people right now who plant peppers every year in your garden. I'm jealous of you because I live in a condo up on the second floor and I don't have a garden. And then you don't know what to do with your peppers. And it might get a little wicked in your house. You might want to dehydrate in your garage or something. But imagine what you could do. But I wanted to show you, AJ, I don't know if you've seen this. So this is the new Ninja Foodie air fryer oven. So think Breville, but look what's going on. It's up. It's a compact one. So you go like this. So I have the entire counter when I want it. And then I can, and it's very small. There's not a lot of space, but it has dehydrate is one of their functions, and they have a dehydrator basket. But this was ideal. I got that Breville after you and I talked, and I just took it to my cooking school. But I use this to dehydrate some ingredients that I can turn into these powders, like with the spices that I was talking about. And now I'm desperate for some jalapeno pepper powder is
Yeah,
going to
well,
happen.
they sell it at Costco. That's where I buy it, and it comes in this
I'm going to
big
get some.
container. So I just find it gives it that like je ne sais quoi. Hey, we haven't really talked about your books. I have 3 of them.
Okay.
I love all the photographs in your book. It's like it's so enticing. I have the air fryer book. I have the pressure cooker book, and I have the Main
Yep.
Street Vegan Academy book. But I
Oh
think
yeah.
you have a couple of others that I do
I
not have.
do. So this was my first baby ever. So Jenny Messina and I co-authored Vegan for her. And when I say co-author, I mean that she worked really hard and I just made some recipes because it's a nutrition book for women. And then it has 50 recipes in the back that I did. And then, as I told you, my first book baby was vegan pressure cooking on my own, and then vegan air fryer. And then you already said the Main Street Vegan Academy. And the ones that have come out the most recently is vegan meal prep. Which are just really simple ways to get meals, just like basically what I made for you guys today. Really, really simple, but making them in batches. Fast and easy vegan cookbook. And then this one just came out last month. This is my first pandemic book. It's very weird to have a book and not go on a book tour. And this is vegan baking for beginners. And please, before you even ask the question, you do not have to ask AJ. I will tell you right now, it is full of vegan butter, sugar, flour, vegan eggs. This is not a diet book. This is trying to get people to stop eating and harming and abusing animals and to have tasty vegan treats and do their part to make justice for everyone, including animals. So those are my books. And then I have my 8th one coming out in the fall. I haven't gotten permission from my publisher to, so I'm not going to tell you the title of it, but I will tell you, AJ, and your longtime fans, you're going to be surprised, and it's going to be the book. You've always asked me, why do I use oil? Why do I do this? Why do that? I'm not saying it's oil free, but let's just say you're going to be very pleased. That's all I can tell you.
So when does it come out so I can have you back on? When does it come out?
October. It's going to come out in October.
Oh boy. Well, I'm booked till February, but we'll do a second
show. Of course
show.
you are.
well, but that's okay. We'll do a second show, like a 2 p.m. show. And when it comes out, you got to let me know.
I love that you're doing that. Oh my God. And so you're just going to keep at it. You're just doing this now every day.
I can't promise I'm going to do it forever, but as long as, look, I can't go anywhere. So
right.
That's where we're going to go.
Yeah, you're in a state that's really been impacted too. I mean,
yeah,
not that like
everything's still closed down. The restaurants nothing's really reopened here. So since I can't go anywhere, I may as well do this. And I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
It's a great service. You've had amazing guests. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, I really like my guests. And like I said, they're amazing. Everybody that I have on is doing something that's great in the world. And I do want people to know about. So Amber says vegan butter that tastes good. I haven't had any, but I hear that Miyoko's Creamery, which they sell at Trader Joe's, is amazing.
Yeah. And I'll also tell you something surprising. That is really good. I have that in my freezer. Surprising, and because Miyoko's butter is very expensive. Understandably, it's worth it. And I think the price is coming down. But believe it or not, the Country Crock brand of the plant, they call it plant butter, is, I wouldn't do it in a really special treat that I was doing, but for everyday cooking or baking where the butter isn't the thing that stands out, it's really affordable, and it's got good flavors. Yeah.
Neat. So talk about some of your tats. What do they mean?
Oh, okay. So broadly, I mean, I got those tattoos that you get 20 years ago, like the tiny little thing on your ankle or whatever. And then I don't know what happened. I'm going to be 55 in 2 weeks. I've had a midlife crisis. I'm getting my whole body tattooed. And I love it. So this arm is what I call my culinary arm. So I've got my vegan chef tattoo. That's where it started. And then this is a sweet potato vine, actually, that's going up my arm. And then I already told you about umami. And then back here, I started with, that's my black cat, Oliver. And then Harry, my dog, is back here. Oh, I have a vegan V back here. And then this is my animal arm. And it started with Clover. Clover's real. She's a person. Her name is Clover. She lives in Woodstock's sanctuary. And I went vegetarian when I was 38 years old after an experience with a goat when I was visiting Africa. And so goats have kind of just like always like broken my heart for what I've done in the past and been the reason to keep living a vegan life. And so I love Clover, and I had her tattooed here. And then I just decided to make this my vegan arm. So I just have, tigers and roosters and elephant and an owl, and then just some, whatever. And I'm trying to think, I have a whole seascape on my back. You don't get to
do you have any that are any colored, or mostly they're Black.
Yeah, this is all colored, and
Right.
on the back, which I'm not going to show you, but it's a whole seascape. So I've got waves, and I've got lobster and dolphins, and so like it's definitely very vegan focused. Just kind of like my way of like it's a conversation starter when people are like, "Why do you have animals in your arm?" And I was like, "Well, because I don't eat them, and I like to see them, and they're my friends. They're not my food." So.
Right. I don't want to get into masks and who's right or whatever, but we have to wear them here. And since I love wearing them because my mask says vegan since 1977, and I have met so many cool people from wearing that mask that just like literally stop me like at Trader Joe's and want information. So, who has a lot? Do you know who Chef Eric Tucker is from Millennium? He has all mushrooms on his arm. He loves mushrooms so much he keeps getting mushroom tattoos.
I love that. I can understand that completely. He has an umami arm.
Yeah, exactly. You guys should compare arms. So you had mentioned that all your classes are free, but yes, they can make a donation. And I wanted to tell you, because we have a donation here from Linda Sparrow. Thank you so much. You can do this. There's something called Super Chat that I didn't even know about, but the viewers told me about it, that you can enable. I don't know which format you're using, and people can make donations while you're cooking.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. And I am actually glad that you brought that up. So just so everyone knows, you do have to register for my classes now. So when I was doing what I called the pandemic series, the Zoom link was open, anyone could come. And now what I'm doing is you go to my website, you register, and it says pay what you can. So you can literally put in $0, but go through the registration process. And then what happens is you'll get in your confirmation email the ingredients. I always have one recipe that we can cook along together. And tomorrow we're actually going to make a Moroccan, because the topic is creating flavor profiles. So we're going to make a Moroccan stew with some spring or summer vegetables. And but if you want, so you can do whatever you want. But it's so AJ, and I don't want to keep you, but you've been in this business for a while too. And we didn't get into this business to get rich. We care about this. You care about health. You care about the animals. I care about the animals, and I wanted to find a way to like have a living and also do my passion. And so when my cooking classes were happening at the Colorado Springs Vegan Cooking Academy, I did 2 a month. One was always free, and I would have 50 to 70 people, and it was a demonstration class, free. And then I would have one hands-on cooking class where I would limit it to 12 people. Everyone got to cook, and we would end with a meal. And so when this pandemic happened, I was like, this is my heart. I want to share this. So I just started doing the free classes. And then all of a sudden I realized I was reaching people beyond Colorado Springs, because I'd always thought I can't do classes. I don't have anything fancy. And then I realized you don't need anything fancy. You just need passion. And so when I was trying to think like, how do I make this keep going? And it just made sense. And so in the way that you plan on going through February, I'm not teaching in-person classes for sure in 2020, and it might be summer of 2021. And so just having a way online so that no matter what your means are, you will get a vegan cooking class from me. And that makes me so happy because it fulfills my personal and professional mission to create a vegan world. So how lucky are you and I that we've gotten to use this time to give people who are staying at home something to do and to further our mission.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
How lucky are we?
And I've been posting the link, not just to your website, but to the exact class if they want to register for tomorrow. And I went there and it said, pay what you can. Now, if I put -10, does that mean you give me $10?
Well, maybe I should go back there and code that and do that for you. I'm going to give you a tip.
I'm just kidding. But that is terrific. And then the rest of them, they can watch replays as well.
Yeah, you can watch the replays on the pandemic classes. But what I'm doing now to make it special for the people who register is you get the link to the class. Like tomorrow, the only way to get the link to the class is to register, even if it's $0. And if you don't, I put an option to pay a minimum of $2.50 to view that class. And I use that to give to animal sanctuaries. So, so either way, there's a way to do it and do good in the world.
That's right. Well, I love that quote. I wrote it down. You don't need anything fancy. You just need passion. See, I learned so much from doing this show. I should actually write a book on all the takeaways that I'm getting.
You should.
Why not? Well, you are just delightful. And please make sure that you contact me. We'll get you on. We'll do a second show, whatever the week is or the week before, whatever better for you, so we can talk about the new book.
Yay. Okay. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was so fun catching up with you. You're one of my favorites. Thank you guys so much for watching. And we have a second show today in about 45 minutes where we're going to be discussing incontinence, which is not fun, but there is a cure, and it's called pelvic floor physical therapy. And it's a great guest named Mandy Menino. So I hope you come back. Thanks again, Jael. I will see you in
Thank you.
October.
Okay, bye.